Good. Well, welcome everybody. I'm really pleased that we're having the opportunity to gather together. I think we'll go around and just do introductions to start, but always really thankful to have the friendship and the collegiality that the county shares with each of you. You all represent each of your municipalities and the Board of Education in a phenomenal way. And part of today, I think I shared with a couple of you that the purpose of today, in high school, I was voted most likely to be a college professor. And I know we have two attorneys here, so people with doctorates and also wonderful educations and backgrounds. Amazing education right here. But part of it is to have an informal discussion around the topic of civility and professionalism, not only in Douglas County, but at a state and national level. And to begin the discussion, we received a statistic that 93% of citizens see civility as a top issue for them. And for 68% of those same citizens that were polled, they feel like they don't want to engage when they see government not operating in a way that is civil. And so I thought it'd be a good opportunity to hear from each of you about, first of all, what your role is and what you do, so some healthy introductions, and then maybe just some stories and background about what it's like on your councils and what you experience both internally, externally. I know we all have meetings that sometimes get packed with folks that have opinions, and that's okay. That's what we're here to do. But each of you navigate that in such a beautiful and professional way. I know as a county, we're very thankful for your leadership. And I guess with that, I'd love to start with introductions.
Sure. Mike Peterson, President of the Douglas County School District Board of Education, part of the professionalism. I'm here representing myself and my personal experiences on the board and navigating some of those issues. Certainly not speaking for the board, but happy to contribute. And before we just go around and do the introductions and get into it, one of our big norms is positive intent. And that's something that I believe we're here to talk about today. How do we improve? How do we get better in our partnerships, in our individual abilities to navigate issues when we're going to have disagreements. So I'm looking forward to the discussion today.
I'm Mark Dickerson. I'm the Vice Chair for the Highlands Ranch Metro District, just having stepped down recently from being the chair for several years. I'm very interested in this topic. I've actually put a lot of thought into it over the last several years because just as a constituent and a citizen, I have seen the national politics and the state politics devolve and been upset and disgusted by it. I would probably say I count myself even among the 68% that don't even want to engage sometimes, and that's a natural reaction, I think. But there's a way forward. So, and I appreciate this discussion to explore it.
Thank you, Mark. Laura Hefta, Parker.
So Laura Hefta, a member of Parker Town Council, and I've been a member on Parker Town Council for about 2.5 years as an elected official. And I'm interested in this discussion because with civility in elected officials, it leads to positive outcomes and it leads to good governance and transparency. So this civility in government relations is always at the foremost of getting things done in government. So I'm interested to hear about what my colleagues have to say.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Mayor Gray.
Yep, thank you for having me. I'm Mayor Gray, Jason Gray from town of Castle Rock. I've been mayor for almost 5 years now, 4.5 years, I guess. And, one of the stories I talked with Abe about was, when COVID first started, I got really hot and heavy back in March of 2020. I remember talking to an individual and he was like, in the next 6 months to a year, we're going to see the best in people and the worst in people. And I remember just having, I was really upset with that. I was like, no, I thought we were going to rally. I thought we were going to, be amazing. Our town, our county, the state, the national politics. I really thought we were going to rally around each other. And I've never been so wrong in my life. I mean, I was absolutely and utterly wrong, and it was really disappointing. I felt like the town, we rallied as far as doing a great job with grants and rallied around our citizens and our people who were sick, and also around our doctors and nurses and our businesses. But I think we just lost the civility of it, and it just hasn't come back. The county did a great job with grants as well, and we did a great job, and there was a lot of good things happening. And so I think we just lost sight of the good things, and we just focused on what was really hard in life and kind of stuff. And I found that constituents and people in general either wanted to commiserate and be on the same team to commiserate, or argue with no in between, no gray area. It was you're either with me or you're against me. And that was just really unfortunate to see. So I appreciate the dialogue, and thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. Mayor West from Larkspur.
Mayor Charlotte West from Larkspur. I've been mayor this last year. I was a council member a year before that, and I was also mayor back in 2006 to 2012. So I've seen a lot kind of come and go through Larkspur. We haven't really grown much, but yet everything we do becomes a battleground. And trying to keep the councils being civil is one huge thing you have to kind of keep working on. Keeping townspeople and mainly more the surrounding area that think they're Larkspur, and we do want their opinions and honor and respect what they have to say. But the bottom line is they're not within the town, so they don't really have a say. They just have a voice. And it's become increasingly harder. I think that statistic that you gave is so true, that of all those people that think there is incivility, they don't want to get involved because they see all the incivility that goes on at a council meeting or on a certain subject. So they just are like, I'm not going to go because I don't want to get involved in that. So it's always how do we get those people to re-engage and to be involved when there's a controversial kind of subject going on out there. You're going to hear from the naysayers. Bottom line, doesn't matter what it is, but you don't always hear from the people that are either in favor or at least just understand the process. And that's where we find it so difficult, is to educate the way local government works, where you get new people every few years. They never really learn the process, and especially in a small town like Larkspur, you may go an entire 4 years of being on council or mayor and not ever see some of these processes happen. So you don't know what the process is. So that's where we're really, wanting to see how do we get that through to people?
Yeah.
And,
well, Mayor, thank you for that. I think that's a really good comment. And the reason that each of you are here is you really represent the best of what it means to be civil in government. And so I think we're incredibly thankful, as I said, that you run your meetings in such a way that people really have confidence in your communities. So I might ask the question, what does civility mean for you in your respective roles? Mike?
Sure, I'll start off. And one of the things I think a way we can show civility is through respectful dialogue and trying to maintain decorum. If we violently or vehemently disagree with each other, that's fine. We're going to have differing points of view, but if we can do it in a respectful way that doesn't assign motives to other people, but just sticks to the facts and specific opinions and acknowledge those other facts, opinions, and perspective, I think that's the way we move forward. Once we let emotions get in there and once things become personal, that's when things break down. Civility breaks down, and that's never good for anybody. It's not good for your argument. It's not good for the arguments of other members on a board or in a committee that may oppose your view, because we just need to model that civility that was talked about. It's really easy to contribute to the bifurcation of society in the extreme ends. And last thing I'll say is I think our job as elected officials is to empathize with everyone. And by empathize, I don't mean sympathize or show compassion. It's to truly lean in and try to understand that other person's perspective to the point where you can state their perspective back to them, even if you really disagree with it, and have them shake their head and go, yeah, that's right, that's what I believe. And if we would spend a little bit more time listening and empathizing with other members, whether it's board members, council members, or community members, I think that'll go a long way towards building civility.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I would echo what Mike said. Respect and civility, I think, are key. And the empathy as well. Not that long ago, a number of months back, last year, maybe it's been about a year, our board was really going through a difficult patch. We'd had a sudden resignation of our general manager, and we had a number of projects. We have some large projects going on right now, and our staff was stretched. And everybody's nerves were getting a little bit frayed. And one of the other board members went off and just attacked me and got very personal. Didn't like it.
Yeah.
But I also recognized there is no benefit here to fighting back on something like this, because I recognize the background on this was everybody's nerves were frayed, and it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with the situation we were in.
Yeah.
And so I pretty much just let it go. There was no sense in, if I wanted to fight about it, then the whole meeting devolves and we get nothing done, when in fact the solution here was to get something done.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. So when you speak about empathy, I think it also means understanding the other person that you're working with. Yeah, you're not going to agree with these people, with everybody all the time. If you did, we wouldn't have to have these boards. We wouldn't have to have much in the way of city government. But we have multiple people sitting on councils and sitting on boards to bring different perspectives, and we have to respect those different perspectives. And understanding where they're coming from and really getting at the root issue, that what they're saying may not be what they're meaning, that what they're saying is a byproduct of some type of pressure, and you really need to dig down and understand that. And once you do that, you're in a better position to make things positive.
Really well said.
Well, I'm happy to report on Parker Town Council that we are a very civil group. I'd like to say we set the standard in Douglas County for civility. At our town council meeting, our mayor, Jeff Toberg, he sets the tone at a very business-like meeting. And we stick to the facts and the issues that we have to resolve. Now, that's not to say that we haven't had disagreements of opinions, but one of the things our mayor does is we stick to the issues and the facts at hand. It doesn't devolve into personal attacks or personal comments on anyone. And our town council members, we are mature enough to get past any personal attacks, and we stick to the facts, and we have open debate. Now, we don't always agree on everything, because we don't, but we problem solve together, and we take everyone's opinion on something into consideration, and we come as a group and problem solve. And as my own self as a council member, I've introduced a military method of problem solving. Can we have 3 different courses of action, the way the military did, the way the Army did? And let's problem solve on those. There's not one way to solve a problem. Sometimes there's 2 or 3 different courses of action on how to solve a problem. And so we've introduced that. I've introduced that. And I've also introduced guidelines for elected officials. I've had our attorney, I led the charge on having a document written by our town attorneys several years ago that outlines our duties as elected officials and lines we can't cross. And this document has helped tremendously. It's in writing now. And so our elected officials know their ethical responsibilities and their legal responsibilities. And so we really do have a high functioning town council in Parker, Colorado.
It's wonderful. Parker's my district, so really proud of you guys.
No, I appreciate it. Again, and thanks for all the comments. And I agree. It just needs to be more civil in general. We're pretty fortunate that when we have a pretty engaged community, and when our citizens come to town council meetings, we're all pretty adamant that we want to listen to everybody. Whether we disagree or agree. And I've been to a county meeting recently where, basically that the citizens went over time, and you said no, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna listen to all of our citizens talk, and I think we're very similar in that respect. That we want our citizens to keep going, and we have extra time at the end of the meeting if there needs to be. And I think that, what we're seeing with our council is I think we're behaving better, and I think that we've hopefully turned a corner a little bit. And but I think that in general, we're just seeing people who are still upset and still angry, but I want to listen to you even if you're angry or not. But I think that what we try to do in our council is, you can't yell, you can't shout, you can't scream. We want to hear what you're saying. But what happens so many times is once someone starts screaming at you, you're not really hearing what they're saying anymore. They've in some ways they've almost lost credibility, and it's hard. There's no give and take. It's just a take it. You just gotta take it and okay, well I get it. You're really upset and we have a lot of times we'll have questions or follow up issues, but it's hard to have a follow up issue with somebody who's really really upset and screaming. Passion is great. Anger is not so much.
It's well said. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, I agree with what everyone has said here. I think it's all great. I think that is one of the big issues, like you said, Jason, is that when someone gets way over passionate about their feelings and it becomes uncivil, that it's harder to listen to. And I've explained 2 or 3 different topics recently over and over, and they still just don't understand it. And I'm like, dude, maybe I just can't be heard. I don't know. Maybe I'm not making sense. But it's just, if we as a community and as a nation really can just really learn to get back to being very civil and understanding of everybody else. Understand that your opinion is your opinion, and I'm willing to hear everyone's opinion, and our council is good about letting them. We passed a resolution that said that if there's over, I think, 15 people or something, we can shorten their time that they have to speak, but we haven't done that yet. We still let everybody have their 3 minutes of time, even though legally we could stop them at 90 seconds, but we've kind of learned you can't really say much in 90 seconds anyway, so because we want to hear from everybody. But we'd like to hear not necessarily the same thing over and over. So that's, what would be good.
That's really good.
Let me add one more thing, if I may.
Please.
Another little anecdote. A number of years back, we, with the help of the county, took over what is now known as the Highlands Ranch Mansion. And with the idea that we were going to develop it into a destination where people could have weddings there, could have meetings there, business meetings, and we've been very successful in that. That proposal brought out a lot of people in the neighborhood who were very, very angry, to your point. And there was a lot of shouting about telling us all the bad things that were going to happen. We were going to, there was going to be too much traffic. My favorite was there were going to be vagrants living on the property, and they would increase the crime in the area. We managed to pull the project together, as I said, with the help of the county, And it's been a very successful venture. And now many of those same people who were opposed to it, who lived in the area, you ask them today, where do you live? They'll proudly tell you, oh, I live up by the mansion.
Yeah,
So
that's a great anecdote.
it is. I think it's instructive. I think there's a natural, on the part of the public, there's a natural fear, if you will, of the unknown, that you're going to change things and it's going to make things worse.
Yeah.
And I think that government does not always get it right, but we definitely need to communicate clearly and give them all the information that we can so that they can try and get their heads around it. And hopefully that means less shouting in our meetings.
Yeah. That brings up a really interesting story from my perspective. I know, mid-COVID, Jason, you talked a little bit about what that was like. From your perspective, for the three of us at the county level, we were watching those metrics every day and really got to the point of thinking we need to have our own health department. And we were told, gosh, you're crazy. You can't do that. You can't break away and create this new structure. And, to Mark's point, fast forward to today, and citizens are so thrilled to have that local control over public health. But sometimes leadership does take some courage to do things with foresight, even though it may be difficult. And I know each of you does that really well. I heard from Mike this issue of empathy. And Mark, you talked about taking the high road. I think when you talk about empathy, I share that with you. When a citizen comes in and has an opinion, and it's a tough opinion or a challenging opinion, like Sherilyn stated, all they have is their voice. For each of us, we were empowered by the citizens to make a decision. I mean, we really can cast a vote representing, in almost all of our cases, thousands of individuals. And so for us, we get a voice and we also get a vote. So I'm very empathetic for those that show up, because at the end of the day, they're coming at probably a time that's inconvenient for them, whether it's an evening meeting or our hearings are in the middle of the day, so they're taking time off work to be with us. If we get yelled at a little bit or there's some words that we don't appreciate, that's probably okay, because at the end of the day, that's all they have. Now, what do we prefer? I think we like to have professionalism, civility, decorum in our hearing room. I know for us, we try to limit so that everybody has an opportunity. Everyone gets 3 minutes. So we don't have one person that speaks for an hour, and takes up the time of another individual that also took time off work. So we do have those time limitations, but I think everyone talked about really wanting to get that public input. And I think that's one of the highlights of Douglas County. Each of us in our respective capacities, I would say, from going to Castle Rock Town Council meetings or going to the Parker meetings, and I know I've been to the Board of Education, you all really do a great job of trying to get as much public input as possible. And I think that's really well respected. To Mark's point, you talked about taking the high road, and I really applaud you for when those personal attacks come, for you to say, that's okay.
Well, it was out of character.
Yeah.
It was out of character, and I recognize that. I mean, we don't have those type of meetings. I think it's the first time I ever remember having one. I've heard stories before I was on the Metro District Board that there was a board member a decade ago or so more that was a real problem, and those things do happen.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I wasn't on the board at that time, but especially when you see that it's out of character for someone
Yeah.
just really recognizing, hey, let's get onto our agenda. We'll get this thing thrashed
Well, you could have
out.
lost your temper and just shot back, and I think it says a lot about you that you did
Well,
not.
let me. I've had to think about this a long time. I don't take things personally.
Yeah.
But more than I realized a long time ago, to get angry, it takes a lot of energy. I don't really care to spend my energy that way.
So
Yep.
your advice is be lazy.
No, my advice is to spend your energy on something productive.
Yeah. Laura?
And that's an excellent point. Getting angry. You just remember I always remember, why am I here? What is my purpose? My purpose is to represent the people of Parker. Now, you will have people in the public get upset at some of your decisions, and you will have people telling you that they're not going to vote for you and they don't like your decisions. And you're going to have some shouting and incivility at meetings. It has happened during our meetings. Again, I think the leader sets the tone on that. Mayor Toberg does set the tone for civility in our meetings. And if I have been personally attacked in a way, again, I think Mark brings up a really good point. There's, it is maturity, it's control, it's years of being a solid professional, and you've got to control your temperament and your emotions, and that's not always easy to do, but it's many years of responding logically and calmly to whatever is thrown at you from the public. And for my choice on that, I choose to educate. If there is emotion running high, there is a lot of fear with that emotion. There's a lot of fear coming from the audience, and I'll take the time off the record to go back and to talk to my constituents and to alleviate and calm their fears. I'm going to take the time to help them understand where we as elected officials are coming from, because I don't want that fear out there on the decisions we've made. For instance, in our town, we are now developing our downtown Parker. And we have sold our 5 town-owned properties to a developer. And there's been a lot of fear over what Parker will look like because of those 5 properties now being sold and developed by a private developer, Confluence Companies. And we have taken the time to alleviate those concerns. We have a top-notch company developing those properties and taking the citizens in the town of Parker what they want to see in the town according to town standards. So we've alleviated a lot of those concerns right now by taking the time to educate. So my goal is always, I think, with Mayor Toberg's and the rest of the town council. I know Josh Rivero does an excellent job of educating offline. So does John Dyack and our council members Todd Hendrick and Barrington, and our newest town council member, Brandy Wilkes. We take the time offline to educate, and I think this has really helped.
Yeah, I'd like to add to what Laura said. This education to combat fear is critical because I think it's just human nature. If there's often incomplete information, people will jump to conclusions, or there's a void. And people just, although just about every council or board has some type of norm that says assume positive intent, our constituents don't always do that. And when there's a blank, they will usually fill it in with the most negative thing possible, for whatever side of the political spectrum you are. So that communication and education is absolutely critical to assuaging fear, because people will assume the negative. And if you can just, again, what I found is even if people disagree with you, better to have a stated position that they know what it is rather than let people guess and fill things in and assume things. What I found is when that happens, they're almost always inaccurate. They're very passionate, and you understand their perspective, but they just lack information to see the whole picture. And once that information through education, or whether that's policy or public statements, is provided, then people tend to just disarm a little bit, and now you can engage in that civil dialogue that we're all hoping to see.
I think you raise a really good point about what do you do as an elected official when there is misinformation out there, especially on social media? How do you manage? What's that?
It's common.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Common.
Yeah.
Not only is it common, but what I find we've discovered recently that rumors with social media spread very quickly, and those rumors are usually, well, let me put it this way. I have no idea where they come from. I mean, somebody just says something and as a comment, and other people take it as truth. And then, as you all well know, we've been planning to build a senior center for several years, and we've now broken ground. It's under construction. During that planning stage, we'd have people showing up, again, telling us, well, we heard that, for instance, you've taken away our open space. That was always dedicated open space. And no, that property was never, there's no designation of open space. It's open space in a public purpose. And so we were free to build on that property. It was never rezoned, is my point. And they said, oh, yes, it was. And I finally said, okay, if you believe that, go down to the clerk's office down in Castle Rock. And I said, you could look it up, see where it was rezoned, bring it back to me. I'll concede the point.
It's an interesting point. I've heard a couple of times. I could see in your faces, you're like, well, we've got a project just like that where people, and Sherilyn said that too, that dealing with misinformation is not always easy. And sometimes people show up, and even though you have the facts right in front of you and lay it out, it's kind of they're committed to that position. I think a couple of people talked about, personal attacks and what that looks like. I think for us, and I think certainly for me, you realize the regular citizen doesn't care what you're fighting about, and they don't care who's right. They just want to see you do your job. Government, get out of the way, do what you're supposed to do, and they really don't care, who's on what side or not. And so I think when those personal attacks come, it's rising above, even when it's tough, and we all do that imperfectly, and really identifying what are the facts. We had a really contested hearing the other night, had a couple hundred people in the audience, and one of the applicants came forward, and she was horribly attacked and personally attacked for a pretty significant amount of time. And I really appreciated, she got up and was very clear and said, I'm not going to address any of those personal attacks on me. I'm going to focus on the facts and the legal criteria for this application. And I just feel like that means something not only to us as decision makers, but I think to those that are commenting.
If I could add something.
Yeah.
I think one thing that we all need to recognize is there's a lot of what I call background noise. Okay, background noise is a lot of different things, but let me just give a few examples. Example number one, we've got a news media now that is not interested in helping citizens understand what the facts are. They're interested in drumming up eyeballs because they're all being run by the entertainment division rather than by news editors anymore. And driving eyeballs is typical sales strategy, which is you get the sale by making people uncomfortable. So the news media is agitating. As I like to say, they're more interested in generating heat rather than light.
If it bleeds, it leads.
If it bleeds, it leads, exactly. And you've got that, you've got the polarization between the two parties. A lot of what's going on seems to be, by going on, I'm talking about not only through media, but through social media, just in our daily lives. We have two things going on. One is there's a lot of background agitation to try and get us all uncomfortable. And the second thing that's happening is people have developed this sense of, oh, I'm offended by such and such. Sometimes it's the most petty, small thing in the world, but they are, quote unquote, offended. And discussions like we're having today, adult discussions of issues, don't happen because of this. And when that becomes a social norm, I think it really becomes more important that we rise above that and focus and just say, I'm an adult, I'm going to shut out the background noise.
Again, I think years of self-development, really, working on yourself as a human being, whatever stage of life you're at, your own self-regulation. How do you regulate yourself as a leader? For me, I know it's exercise and meditation and walking in nature, enjoying our beautiful Douglas County. But that's one of the keys to remaining calm, grace under pressure when you're in the hot seat. And I think Mayor Gray has probably done a great job of that. He's been in the hot seat and he's remained calm under
Cheers to
fire.
Mayor Gray.
So Mayor Gray, what do you think about grace under pressure?
Well, I appreciate that, Laura. Thank you very much. I hope to model that. I want to model that. When I first became mayor, or when I first started running for mayor, or even thinking about running for mayor, my biggest concern was of being thin-skinned. I just thought that maybe I just couldn't handle being yelled at or that kind of stuff. And that part actually hasn't really shown itself as much as I thought it was going to. And I think mostly because I really believe that we're doing good things in Castle Rock and Douglas County. And I really believe in our council and our staff. And when you have that belief in how good your staff is and how good your council is and how good the community is, sometimes getting yelled at is okay, and it just is because you need to check and balances. You need somebody else's perspective, because sometimes you're like, oh, we're exactly right. Well, maybe we're 85% right, and we can tweak something here and there. So it's good to have people talking to you. I mean, even yelling sometimes, but really what we need is different perspectives, and then honor different perspectives. And sometimes I'll see something and someone like, oh, I didn't see it that way, and a lot of it has to do with how we talk to each other, right? I mean, we hear what we want to hear sometimes, and sometimes we forget what's actually being said because we anticipate on what's being said. And I just think that can be something that's just hard in general, but also it's misleading sometimes. And so we try to be very upfront, very honest, very transparent. Even if you don't like it, we want to make sure you understand it.
Yeah. In many ways, that's so well said, Mayor Gray, and it's kind of keeping the main thing. I think I heard from each of you, there's a lot of coyote bait out there where people will show up and be like, oh, here's a really intense personal attack or something where it's misinformation, and it's probably easy for all of us to step into that, take the coyote bait and engage in an incivil discussion. But to your point, rising above, focusing on the facts, providing that education and information so that there is a measure of understanding, I think can be really helpful. I know for us, we have the same perspective that Mark has, which is, our county's out of debt. We have a balanced budget, healthiest county in the state. We do a lot of good behind the scenes that people will never know about. There are a lot of governments outside of this room that people might say, well, they're not doing a whole lot in public, and they quietly fight behind closed doors. I think we're known for kind of doing a lot quietly behind closed doors, accomplishing a lot, and fighting like cats and dogs in public. And of course, the media likes to exacerbate that. But I'm actually really proud of our board. I think that, all three of us bring different perspectives from our districts that are really important and deserve to be aired. At the end of the day, to your point, Mayor, it's okay to disagree. It's okay to not always see eye to eye, but to air that discourse and do it in a way that I think creates respect among our community is so critically important. So.
Yeah, just to echo some of those themes, Abe, is you kind of have two choices, right? Everybody brings their own principles and perspectives to their position, but at the end of the day, you can choose partisanship or you can choose partnerships. And when we're dealing with something like Douglas County, where I need to work with 3 commissioners, I need to work with our metro districts, I need to work with our town councils, our mayors, library districts, you name it. It really is a partnership for the good of Douglas County. And sometimes we'll even disagree on priorities and things. But if we choose that partisanship, we enable that noise. And the noise becomes an incentive that is weaponized by people on the extreme left, on the extreme right, people that have truly political power-based agendas and objectives that are not really in the good of our constituents. So when we can find partnerships, I've sat down with leaders in our union, and now we disagree on a lot of things, but there's some things we absolutely agree upon. And I'm not going to take those and set them aside if we have a period or a point of agreement where we've collaborated with the county commissioners on things like security, and we collaborate with our town councils and metro districts on things like funding, because we know it benefits all of Douglas County. So if we can constantly stick to our principles in which we were elected, but when we're given the choice to err towards partnerships over partisanship, I think that would go a long way to reestablishing and reinforcing civility here in the county.
That is such a great point, Mike. And I think, in a lot of ways, we accomplish a lot as a community because we can assume good intent in everybody here. I mean, the council members and the elected officials that I have the opportunity to work with here in the county are incredible. I know I can immediately call or text any one of you. I'm probably a better texter than I am an emailer. I'm the first to admit that. But I get an immediate response, and it's how can we work together, and is there an avenue for that common possible agreement? Rarely ever do I feel as though there's a challenge or an opposition or an elected official in this community that I can't just pick up the phone and call. And that says a lot about each of you. It really does. So, Sherilyn, I'm going to be calling you about Renaissance Fair.
Okay, I'm there for you. I'm always brought back to my first term as mayor. I had a kind of contentious council that liked to nitpick each other. I had community people, which we'd always have, small communities, you always have those people that everything's kind of, they feel important, which they are. However, after a very kind of crazy council meeting, and one of many, I remember my attorney at the time turning to me and saying, I just don't know how you do this. And I just went, well, and he goes, I think it's that religious upbringing you had. And I said, well, that very well could be it, because I don't get my worth through them or anything. I always spend time before every meeting in prayer, asking for wisdom, because that's where my wisdom comes from, is God. And when I've always kind of described myself as a compulsive rule follower. And if there's a rule, I'm going to follow it. But I found in government there are some rules that you don't even know what they are. How can you follow them? So I'm always telling people, if you don't like the rule, then you work to change it. I have to follow it until it gets changed, because that's the law, And but I also always, every time there's something that is something that you really want to just lash out about, I remember that I'm representing somebody a lot higher than myself. So that's where I get my strength.
Well, you talked a little bit, I think everyone talked about how do you care for the caretakers. You all occupy really significant positions in our community, but in order to show up rested and refreshed for the next day, you have to do those things like exercise and spend time in prayer and make sure you're eating right. I know we always get fed very well in Douglas County. I think we're eating perfectly well right now, but I would agree. I mean, there was a particular moment for me where things got very contentious, and kind of like Mark, there was a moment where I really could have taken it farther and made things much worse. And I'll remember the rain was coming down, and I was with our county manager, and the Lord just provided like this gap, this space in my schedule, which I never have. And we just prayed. We literally just prayed about what to do next. And I came out of that meeting and just hit the pause button and said, we're going to move from what could be really, really bad to what the citizens want, which is the good work of the people. And I always look back on that moment, and I'm thankful for people like you and my county manager that said, hey, go back to the true wisdom that's really guiding us every day. Get your ego out of it. It's not about the title. It's not about the role. It's about the public service that we're all here to do. So.
No, I appreciate that. A couple of things. One is that you mentioned the ego. One of the things that when I first became mayor, I was talking to Jason Bauer, who was on council, and we were talking about, take your job very seriously, but don't take yourself very seriously. And on top of that, Michael mentioned it as well, and Abe, it's a lot of it's the partnerships within our county, right? I mean, we joke around about different towns and cities and stuff in the county, but I want everyone to do well. I mean, I'm excited when something's going well in Lone Tree or Highlands Ranch or Parker or the Renaissance Festival or Yogi's in south of us in Larkspur. I mean, that's there's a friendly competition, of course, but at the same time, I really enjoy it when Douglas County rises to the top. I really enjoy it when something else happens really well in the county. It doesn't matter what town or city it is. I mean, for that matter, I enjoy it when the state as well. I mean, when you see good things happen, you want to see good things happen, and so I that's why one of the things I really enjoy are partnerships. These kind of meetings or our partnership meetings in general. And Abe mentioned it again earlier. Was I know that I can reach out if I have a question, like, hey, what's going on there? How did you guys solve this problem? And so I really enjoy that, and I really do appreciate it.
A rising tide lifts all boats, and I have a really good example of your leadership in that regard. I started a Douglas County Homeless Initiative a couple of years ago after we saw, an encampment with needles and drug paraphernalia. Fast forward to a really robust meeting where people were concerned about how Douglas County was going to handle homelessness actually right in Castle Rock. And because of Mayor Gray's leadership and the leadership of his council, we had that representation right in our room, and he was able to speak directly to our shared citizenry about next steps. And I think, today we have a point in time that's 46% lower than it was the year before. And we're talking about solutions where our entire county is now really supportive and I think excited about where we're headed. But that wouldn't have happened without Castle Rock coming alongside us. So.
And Abe, as our commissioner, you've done a beautiful job on the Douglas County Homeless Commission. You really, really have. You've brought the community together. We've got the signs up. We've got people contributing to help homelessness in Douglas County. We have the Douglas County Community Foundation contributing. You've really done an outstanding job with that, Abe. I really have. And I want to compliment all three commissioners, Commissioner George Teal, Commissioner Laura Thomas. All three of you have brought outstanding things to our county, and I respect each one of you. I really, really do. All extremely bright individuals that have something different to contribute. Abe with his logic, Laura with her pragmatism, and George with his business-like ability to look at things from a business perspective. And so you have these strong personalities. But just because you have a strong personality doesn't mean you can't get along. I think, what can you see in each other? What can you complement in each other to bring out the best in someone else? That's really the key. And I always like to call it the sandwich method. Can you find something really positive in someone? And if there is a negative comment or a criticism that you have to make, put that in the middle, but always end on a very positive closing note, whatever you do, because people remember the last impression of you when you leave the room. We're all going to be subjected to criticism, some unfounded in our time as politicians, as elected leaders, and that's okay. Like Abe says, that's okay. What's most important is moving the county forward, moving your town forward, and doing that with some grace and some style. And all three of you have. Abe, you've really, really led the way on this. And all three of you have done a fantastic job. And the county really appreciates all three of you.
Well, flattery will get you everywhere, but I will say it's not about me at all. I wanted to acknowledge and thank Laura Hefta as well. You are a perfect example of intelligence, professionalism, and leadership. Very thankful you're in my district, and that you also show up for our homeless initiative meetings. You're on that council as well, and you're really moving the needle. So thank you for that.
I wanted to also add to what Mayor Gray was talking about. I can't underscore enough, I think, how significant the partnership of Douglas County governments is. In my former life, I was an attorney in a fairly large firm out in San Francisco, and I represented the city and county of unified city and county of San Francisco, and been in many meetings where we were in meetings with other jurisdictions, neighboring jurisdictions. Often those meetings did not go very well. And the partnership here creates, I think, a very positive climate. Certainly the commissioners lead this, but it does lead for a positive climate. You said that you feel free to pick up the phone and call any one of us at any time.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way.
Yeah.
You know, if I have a problem dealing with something right on the border with Lone Tree, I can call the mayor.
Yeah.
Not a problem.
Yep.
We can talk. And likewise, with all the jurisdictions, just having that as an umbrella, if you will, over us does provide for a sense of we are all in this together. And I think that has been let me just say, it does not exist everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay? And because it doesn't exist everywhere, I think that also speaks to why so many things in Douglas County work and things don't work so well in other places.
Yeah. You know, my dear friend, George Teal, who I serve with, has a great quote that we are friends and colleagues. And, you know, I think one thing, Mark, about the partnership with Douglas County governments is, yes, it's an opportunity to get a lot of big public policy things done, but elected leadership can be a lonely place if you're not interacting with one another. And I feel like when I walk into that room, I'm among a group of equals that all understands what it's like to make significant decisions for a community. And
I go so far as to saying I'm
friendship.
walking into a room with friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think we'll look back on these times probably at a place just like this and share a meal. So.
And just to add to that, the one thing I really like about Douglas County is our ability to make decisions in the interest of Douglas County. We've had national issues, we've had state issues, we've had Denver metro issues, where we don't have that problem or that particular issue down here in Douglas. And I think we are hopefully smart enough to fight for those things that impact positively or negatively Douglas County. And if something comes into the county, we'll fight for what's right here in Douglas, and we'll address those issues, even if it's a national issue. But I try to ensure that our board always looks at, is this in the best interest of Douglas County? You may have an opinion on a national narrative, on a state issue or things, but is this an issue in Douglas County, and is it something we should be concerned with? And how specifically should this policy or program be implemented in the spirit of what Douglas County wants? And that's part of that partnership, and that's what I really appreciate about the partnership of Douglas County governments and all the great partners we have throughout the county. And that's not just elected officials. That's our community, that's our businesses, that's everyone that resides here in Douglas County. It's this wonderful, unique mix of light urban and rural and an independent spirit, and you just don't see that in the Denver satellites, and I hope we never become one of those.
Well, I know we're towards the end of our time. Maybe we could just ask for some closing comments and go around. Mike? Or maybe Sherilyn, we'll come back this way? Yeah.
Well, I just think we should all be civil. How about that?
Easy enough.
And maybe we could make banners and fun things, to tell people to be civil. But all kidding aside, I think it starts with the leadership. And if we can just be able to understand our roles and do what's best for our communities and the area around us, and show that through civility, maybe we'll be able to influence the rest of the people.
It's well said, Mayor. Thank you.
Again, I just want to thank everybody here as well. Again, I think that this is a great first step. I mean, and we've been working on it. I shouldn't say first step, but we've been working hard for a long time, trying to be more civil and trying to be more passionate, but at the same time having compassion and empathy and sympathy. And so I'm looking forward to the more of the same. Hopefully we can just get better and better. So I do appreciate all you guys here, and I appreciate all our citizens and their opinions. And I just think that when you mentioned the leadership, and it's from the top down, and I think that the more we're civil to each other and the more we're compassionate to each other, the better we are as a community. And hopefully we can just kind of trickle down to everybody.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you, Mayor. Thank you. Laura?
And I think it's important as an elected official to inspire confidence as an elected official in your leadership. you are going to get attacked. You are going to get disagreed with. You are going to get put down. And that's okay. That is totally okay.
Yeah.
You fought to get elected. And if at the end of the day, you remember, one, what's the proper role of government? And two, what is your role as an elected official? And to three, make those decisions calmly, with patience, professionalism, and positivity, my 3 Ps. Then you're never going to go wrong as an elected official, and you're going to continue to make excellent decisions for your county and continue to inspire your fellow board or your fellow mayor to calmly and professionally and patiently make those decisions and delay those decisions when you need to. You don't have to make a decision on the spot. Delay the vote, take your time, gather the facts, get the input from the citizens, and then make the decision. So I think that contributes a lot to civility within your own council and with the citizens at large, if you take all that input in and take your time.
Thank you, Laura.
I think in closing, I think number one for me is we all need to learn to shut out the background noise. I want to bring that back because the climate is around us and we're not going to change things if we add to it. We have to recognize that it's there and take a step back and decide, okay, I'm not going to do that. What's the best way to go forward? And keep your eyes on the road, down the road. Where am I going all the time? Lewis Carroll once wrote in Alice in Wonderland, one of my favorite quotes, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And that is probably some of the sagest advice I've ever heard. Keep your eyes on what it is, what your objectives are, and keep pushing in that direction. But do so in a respectful manner and empathetic with other opinions. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you, Mark.
And just in closing, again, I could not be more proud to be part of Douglas County here, and I hope that Douglas County 10 years, 15, 20 years down the road is at least as affluent, prosperous, sense of community, partnership, and everything that makes Douglas County unique today. And I'm just happy to be part of Team Dougco and can only wish the best for all the leaders that have chosen to serve and all of our folks that live here.
Yeah. Well, Mike, thank you for that. And, Mike, Mark, Laura, Jason, Sherilyn, and to all of your respective councils that you serve on, you are friends and colleagues, and it is the honor of a lifetime to be able to serve on your team with you. The county would never take credit for the incredible work that you all do in your respective jurisdictions to make the entire area phenomenal. It's not us. It's your work, each of you, that you do. So we thank you for that, and thank you for your civility. Appreciate you being here with us.